Airport police pulled me out of the TSA line and then read a public threat report filed by my own father, minutes before Grandpa's inheritance hearing. He wanted my chair empty and my name erased. Would you forgive that? Because what happened next proved they'd planned it all for weeks. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. My name is Tessa Monroe, and I'm telling you right now, if your own parents ever try to turn you into a safety threat just to keep you out of court, you are not dealing with family drama anymore. You're dealing with a strategy, and the only way to survive a strategy is to stay calm and start collecting receipts. I was at Philadelphia International, Terminal B, the kind of morning where the airport lights make everybody look a little sick and everybody's coffee breath feels personal. I had my belt looped over my wrist, my boarding pass flattened on the gray tray like a fragile document, and I was doing that TSA routine we all know by muscle memory: shoes off, laptop out, little bag of liquids like you're smuggling shampoo. This wasn't a vacation. This was a sprint to Rio Arriba County Probate Court because my grandpa, Harold Monroe, had a hearing that morning, the hearing where grief stops being a feeling and turns into paperwork, the hearing where a judge says, "This goes to you and this goes to you." And suddenly people who were crying at the funeral start smiling like they just won a game show. And my parents, Grant and Lila Monroe, had been circling that hearing since the funeral like it was the last buffet in town. Every call from them sounded sweet on the outside and sharp on the inside. "Honey, we'll handle it. You don't need the stress. Don't get involved, you'll complicate things." And I kept hearing the unspoken part, the part they thought I was too polite to translate. They wanted me absent. They wanted the judge to see an empty chair where my name should be, and they wanted the story to be, well, she didn't even bother to show up, so clearly she doesn't care. My tray slid forward. I stepped toward the metal detector, and then a uniform moved into my path that was not TSA and not the usual blue shirt supervisor. Dark uniform, airport police, calm face, that calm that doesn't belong to a normal travel day. He said, "Ma'am, come with us." Low voice, firm, not yelling, not asking. My first instinct, I'm not proud of it, was to look behind me like the universe was mistaken. Like there was a more suspicious-looking person in a hoodie who deserved this more than me. But he didn't shift. His partner angled in at my side, not touching me, just positioned in that trained way that says, "Don't run and don't make this loud." And I felt my stomach tighten because airports are one of those places where you can lose your rights and your dignity in the same 3 minutes if the wrong person decides you look off. I kept my hands visible because I've learned the hard way that visible hands keep you alive in other people's narratives. "What is this about?" I asked, and I kept my voice level even though my heart was trying to kick a hole through my ribs. He said, "We need to ask you some questions. Right now." The TSA line behind me did that weird hush that happens when strangers smell a story and don't want to admit they're watching. I glanced at my tray, my wallet, my belt, my phone, my boarding pass, suddenly separated from my things like I'd been unwrapped. "I have a flight," I said carefully, and he didn't argue. He repeated, "You need to come with us." His partner added softer, "Bring your ID if you have it." I reached into my carry-on with slow hands and pulled out my license between 2 fingers like I was holding a mosquito, because in moments like that you don't move like a normal human, you move like you're acting in a courtroom replay. They guided me into a glass-walled little room off to the side, a desk, a chair bolted to the floor, the kind of place designed to make you feel guilty just for existing. The male officer looked at my license and then at me. "Is your name Tessa Monroe?" "Yes." He opened a tablet and scrolled like he was reading a script. "I'm going to read what we received," he said, "and then you can respond." That's when I knew this wasn't random, because nobody says it like that unless someone has already tried to paint you in advance. "We got a report this morning," he said. "Caller states you're traveling today and maybe a threat." The word threat hit the room like a bad smell. "A threat to who?" I asked, and he kept reading, "To the public. Caller states you made statements about making them pay and that you might attempt to cause an incident at the airport." My skin went cold, not because it made sense, but because I recognized the language. My father loves vague words that sound serious, words that can't be disproven in one sentence. Unstable, dangerous, threat. Those words are like master keys. You drop them into an institution, and the institution starts opening doors you didn't ask for. I kept my face still. Who made the report? I asked. He hesitated, just a hair too long, the kind of hesitation that tells you the name will matter. I'm not going to discuss that yet, he said. His partner watched me like she expected tears or rage, like she'd been told. She's emotional, because that's my parents' favorite costume to dress me in. I didn't give them that satisfaction. I'm traveling to a probate hearing for my grandfather's estate, I said. The officer's eyes flicked up. Probate, he repeated. Yes, I said. And if I miss it, my parents get what they want. The female officer's mouth tightened slightly, like she'd seen family weaponized systems before, just with different props. The male officer scrolled again. Caller claims you recently made concerning emergency calls and that you've been reported before. Emergency calls. That was the tell. That's the part that isn't meant to stop you today. It's meant to follow you tomorrow. It's meant to walk into court and sit down in the judge's mind as background noise. Questionable. Unreliable. Safety issue. I leaned forward slightly, hands on my knees, palms visible. Officer, I said, pull the call log tied to this report right now. The original call, the recording, the actual reporting party info. Not a summary. His partner started to say, Ma'am, that's not always, and I cut her off without raising my voice. It will be there, I said, and whoever did this is counting on you not checking. The male officer studied me for a beat, then tapped into a different panel. I watched his face while he read, because people tell the truth with their eyes before their mouth catches up. At first, neutral. Then his thumb stopped. Then his tone changed. Not dramatic, just careful. He angled the tablet slightly away, like he didn't want the glass walls reflecting it. His partner leaned in, read a line, and her expression turned hard. The male officer looked back at me. Ms. Monroe, he said slowly, you said your parents want you to miss a probate hearing. Yes, I said. He swallowed once and said the sentence that turned my stomach into ice and gasoline at the same time. The call log lists the reporting party by name, he said, and it lists your father, Grant Monroe, as the caller. There's a special kind of humiliation when a stranger says your father's name while you're sitting in a police room like a suspect, because it means your private life has leaked into a public system and you did nothing to deserve it. The female officer read it again, quieter, like it offended her. Relationship listed as father. The male officer tapped another tab. Any prior incidents at the airport? None. Any protective orders? Pending charges? No, he played the audio. And there it was, my father's voice, too smooth, too concerned, performing fear like he was auditioning. This is Grant Monroe, he said on the recording. I'm calling because my daughter is flying today, and I'm afraid she's going to do something. She's been unstable. She's made comments about making people pay. I'm scared for the public. The female officer didn't blink. The male officer paused it, and the silence after my father's voice was loud. He included probate, the female officer said flatly, like she couldn't believe the audacity. And then my father's recording continued. She's going to probate court today. She's upset about the inheritance. She's not thinking rationally. That's when I knew it wasn't just sabotage. It was a full character assassination attempt, because he wasn't just trying to delay my flight. He was trying to create an official trail that made me sound unstable on paper. I kept my posture composed and said, he's trying to build a record. So a judge sees me as dangerous if I show up late or not at all. The male officer nodded once, the kind of nod that means, yeah, I see the play. He said, we're going to document this as retaliatory and connected to a civil matter. We're going to run a quick check to confirm there's nothing else, and then we're going to get you back to your flight. The female officer slid a statement form to me. Short facts only. I wrote exactly what happened, that my father filed a report, that I deny threats, that I believe it's interference with the probate hearing, and that I request preservation of the audio and call logs. Midway through this, let me ask you something, and I want you to actually answer in the comments because I read them and the stories and they are always wilder than mine. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it where you are? Because I swear, Betrayal hits different depending on whether it's sunrise and you're still hopeful or midnight, and you already know the world is capable of anything. The male officer handed me a small incident number slip and said, "Keep this. If anybody later claims you were detained for violent behavior, this contradicts that." I tucked it behind my phone case like it was a life jacket. Then the female officer leaned over his shoulder and said, "There's a follow-up note from the reporting party." The male officer scrolled, and his jaw tightened. "Your father told dispatch you might be carrying documents related to the probate hearing and that you might destroy them if confronted," he said, and that's when my blood went cold again because now I understood the next layer. This wasn't just about delaying me. This was about fishing. If they could get a bag search, they could get my paperwork. They could take my evidence and then walk into court clean. I leaned forward and said, "I'm carrying one thing. A call log and dispatch summary from the night my grandfather died. My parents don't want it in court." The male officer's posture changed like he smelled something bigger. "Why would a probate hearing hinge on an emergency call log?" he asked. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Because they told the court my grandfather wasn't lucid when he changed his will, and that log proves who was with him and who wasn't." He didn't argue with me. He opened the door and said, "We're walking you back." And that word walking mattered because it meant visibility, it meant witnesses, it meant my father couldn't later claim I ran or freaked out in public. They escorted me back to the checkpoint. My tray was still there like nothing happened, and I put my shoes on with steady hands because calm isn't weakness, calm is control. I cleared TSA, checked the departures board, and saw my gait had changed because of course it had, and I started moving fast, not running, weaving through rolling suitcases, thinking, get on the plane first, then deal with the emotional crime scene later. And then my phone buzzed with an airline email, and before I even opened it, I felt it in my gut like a weather change because when people like my parents miss once, they don't stop, they just switch tools. My phone buzzed again, and I swear the vibration felt louder than the airport announcements because it wasn't just another update, it was the kind of message that changes your whole posture. The email subject line said, "Your itinerary has been updated," and before I even opened it I just knew my parents had found a second lever to pull, because when people like Grant and Lila Monroe don't get their way by asking nicely, they don't argue. They outsource the argument to institutions that can crush you quietly. I opened the email while walking and my eyes locked onto the sentence that made my throat go dry. "Your flight has been canceled." And right under it, the reason line, not weather, not maintenance, not crew shortage, it said canceled per customer request. Customer request. Like I was the customer and I had calmly decided, on the most important morning of my life, to cancel my own seat and stroll home. I stopped so fast a man clipped my shoulder with his roller bag and muttered, "Watch it." And I wanted to laugh because if he only knew the real thing to watch was the way family can sabotage you with a smile and a phone call. I didn't call the airline hotline because hotlines are where time goes to die. I went straight to the nearest service desk, the one under the bright sign with the airline logo, and I planted my ID on the counter like a chess piece. The agent looked half asleep until he saw the timestamp and my face. Then his eyes sharpened. "My flight was canceled minutes before boarding," I said, keeping my voice steady, because that's the first rule when you're being framed. Don't sound like the person they're trying to paint. I did not request that. He typed fast, clicked, frowned at the screen like it offended him. "I'm seeing a cancellation request," he said slowly. "It was done by someone who answered your security question." That sentence hit like a slap because it told me my parents weren't guessing anymore. They had access, which means either they knew my answers from childhood because they raised me, or they were listed somewhere they shouldn't be listed, or they'd already been inside my account. "I didn't authorize anyone," I said. "Do you have an authorized traveler on your profile?" he asked. "No," I said, and I put weight behind the no. He clicked again. "They called in," he said. "They had your confirmation code." Of course they did. My parents never steal with crowbars. They steal with familiarity. They steal with the little facts they collected over years of pretending they were just being involved. He hesitated when I asked the question I needed answered. "Can you see the number that called?" I asked. His eyes flicked up like he wasn't sure he was allowed. "We don't always," he said. I leaned in slightly, not threatening, just unavoidable. "Please," I said. "This is interference with a probate hearing. I was just stopped at security because of a false report filed by my father." I have an airport incident number. I slid the little slip out from behind my phone case and pushed it across the counter. The agent read it, and you could literally watch his attitude switch from customer service autopilot to, "Oh, this is serious." He turned back to his screen, clicked deeper, and said, "I can see the caller ID logged in the notes." He paused, then read it out loud like he couldn't believe he was saying it. Caller identified himself as Grant Monroe. I didn't gasp, I didn't throw a fit. I just felt this cold clarity spread through my chest, because now I had two pieces of proof that my father wasn't trying to protect anyone. He was trying to control the timeline. "Did he give a reason?" I asked. The agent scrolled, then read. "He said you're not well and not safe to travel alone." There it was again, the same poison phrase, dressed as concern. Unstable. Not safe. Like I was a toddler wandering toward traffic instead of a grown woman trying to attend a hearing. "I need you to reverse it," I said, "and I need those notes printed." His fingers hovered. "Reversing depends on seat availability," he said, and I didn't even blink. "I will pay for a new ticket," I replied. "I just need to get there." He clicked, the screen refreshed, and he exhaled like he'd just watched a close call. "There's one seat still open," he said. Lucky, he almost said, but I wasn't lucky. I was racing a coordinated effort to erase me. He printed a new boarding pass, slid it to me, and then he printed the internal call notes, a thin sheet of paper that looked boring until you understood what it meant, my father's name typed in a field that made it official. He lowered his voice. "Keep that," he said, "and tell them to flag your profile for in-person verification only." I nodded. "Thank you," I said once. Because gratitude is fine, but lingering is how people miss planes. I walked fast toward the gate with my new boarding pass in my hand and proof in my folder, and as I moved, I could feel the rage rising like heat under my skin because tell me this, what kind of parent calls the police and an airline to label their own child as unsafe just so they can win paperwork? That's not protection. That's sabotage in a cardigan. Boarding had already started when I got to the gate. The scanner beeped green when I handed over my pass, and that stupid little green light felt like oxygen. I stepped onto the jet bridge and didn't look back, because looking back is how fear gets invited to sit with you. I found my seat, shoved my bag under the chair, and only then did my hands shake for one private second, just the fingertips, like my body was finally catching up to what my brain had been suppressing. I forced my fingers still and opened my folder. The call log packet was there, corners crisp, the kind of document that doesn't look powerful until it's in a judge's hands. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from my mother, Lila, short and sweet the way snakes are short and sweet. "We know you're trying to stir things up. Turn around. You'll regret it. No, are you okay?" "No, did you make your flight?" Just control, threat, and that familiar implication that my presence was a crime. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to feed the story they were writing. Then another notification hit, and this one was the kind that makes you feel like you're falling even while sitting down. It was a court email, a notice I hadn't even subscribed to, which meant someone had added my email on purpose, so I'd see it late. Notice of hearing update. My stomach tightened as I opened it. The hearing time had been moved earlier by 2 hours. 2 hours. That's not a schedule adjustment. That's a trap. That's them saying, even if you fly, even if you run, even if you crawl, we want you arriving after the judge has already heard our version. The plane pushed back from the gate and the engine started that low roll, and I stared at the new time like it was a threat written in digital ink. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I did the only thing left that lived inside my control. I called the probate clerk's office. It rang twice. A woman answered with that brisk courthouse voice that sounds like she's been yelled at all morning. "Rio Arriba County Probate," she said. "My name is Tessa Monroe." I said, "I'm a named beneficiary in the estate matter today. I just received notice the hearing was moved earlier. I'm currently in transit due to interference, and I need to confirm whether the court will allow remote appearance or hold the matter until I arrive." There was a pause, and I heard typing. Then her tone shifted slightly, less routine, more cautious. "Miss Monroe," she said, "the time change was requested as an emergency accommodation." "By who?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately. More typing. "By counsel for Grant and Lila Monroe," she said. My chest went cold because the pattern was now complete. Police report, airline cancellation, hearing moved earlier, 3 systems, 1 goal. I kept my voice calm and clean. Has the court granted anything yet? I asked. She hesitated, then said, your parents' attorney filed a motion to proceed without you based on a claim you were detained by airport police for threat-related behavior. I stared out the airplane window as the runway blurred because that's when it clicked. This wasn't just about money. This was about rewriting me as a threat on paper so they could use the court's authority like a weapon. I need an email for emergency exhibits, I said immediately. We don't accept filings by email, she started, and I cut through gently but firmly. I understand, I said. I'm not asking you to file it. I'm asking where I can send supporting documents for the judge to review in chambers because the motion contains a factual misrepresentation being used to deprive me of my right to appear. Another pause. Then she gave me a secure exhibit inbox. I repeated it back, hung up, and built the cleanest proof package of my life, like I was assembling a life raft in a storm. Subject line simple. Factual, no drama. I attached the airport incident slip showing stop and release, the airline printout showing my father's name as the caller, and screenshots of my mother's text threatening consequences. Then I wrote 5 sentences, each one a brick. Denial of threats, proof of false report, proof of airline interference, proof of malicious motive, request for remote appearance or continuance. I hit send and watched the Wi-Fi will spin long enough to make my palms damp, and when it finally whooshed, I felt something settle that wasn't relief. It was leverage. Then I called my attorney, Elliot Lane, because if your parents are trying to erase you with paperwork, you don't scream, you out-document them. And right then I got a message from the clerk that made my breath catch. The judge has reviewed your exhibits and is considering the motion at the start of the hearing, and I swear in that moment, I could almost hear my father's plan starting to crack. Because the one thing manipulators hate is a neutral third party reading the truth in black and white. And the second my phone buzzed again with Elliot's voice going low and tight, I knew the courtroom had just gotten real. My phone pressed warm against my ear, and I could hear Elliot Lane's breathing change like he'd just stepped into a room where the air got sucked out because somebody lied too boldly, and he didn't waste time easing me into it. He said, Tessa, listen to me. Your father just stood up and told the judge you were removed from security in handcuffs. And for half a second, my brain flashed an image of it like a movie scene, my wrists cuffed, my carry-on tossed open, strangers filming, and then the real reality punched through. That didn't happen. That was a story, a manufactured story meant to stain my name before the judge even looked at the will. And I felt that old familiar rage that comes when someone lies about you with confidence because they're used to people believing them, and then I swallowed it down because rage is what they want you to deliver on a silver platter. Tell the judge the truth, I said, voice low, controlled, the kind of calm that scares liars more than yelling. I am, Elliot replied, and his voice tightened like he was watching a chess clock. But wait, he's asking the clerk to read the airport incident number into the record. That sentence alone was a turning point, because once a judge reads something into the record, it stops being gossip and starts being fact with teeth. I sat back in my seat while the plane leveled and the seatbelt sign stayed on, and I stared at the tray table like it was the only stable object in the universe. In the background, through Elliot's phone, I could hear the courtroom sounds, chairs shifting, a low murmur, that one cough that always happens right before someone important speaks, and then a voice, older, flat, not theatrical, the judge calling the room to order. Elliot whispered, he's looking at your exhibits. And I almost laughed because my parents had expected an empty chair and a quiet win, and instead the judge was staring at the proof they created with their own names on it. I heard the judge say, Counsel, I'm looking at a supplemental exhibit containing an airport incident number, and then, like he was turning pages slowly just to make it hurt, I'm also looking at airline notes identifying the caller as Grant Monroe. The silence that followed was the kind of silence where you can tell people are making eye contact without moving their heads. My father's voice rose next, too quick, too defensive. That's just what she wants you to believe. She's manipulative. And I could picture him, suit jacket buttoned, chin lifted, performing concern the way some men perform masculinity, like volume equals truth. The judge didn't bite. Mr. Monroe, he said evenly, You are not under oath right now, but you are in a court of record. Choose your words carefully. When I tell you my stomach unclenched at that, I mean it because that was the first time in weeks an authority figure didn't treat my father like the default adult in the room. Elliot breathed out quietly, and I could hear the edge of satisfaction he tried to hide, the way a professional hides joy because he's still in a courtroom. The judge continued, I have an airport incident slip here. It indicates stopped, identified, and cleared to proceed. No arrest, no handcuffs, no detention for threats. And then my mother's voice did that thing she always does. That small broken sound like a woman about to cry. The same sound she used at PTA meetings when teachers asked why I looked exhausted. The sound that made strangers soften and made me look like the problem child. My father tried to pivot. Your Honor, she's unstable, he started, and the judge cut him off like he'd seen this trick in 100 cases. Mr. Monroe, he said, you do not get to diagnose your daughter as a strategy. That line hit me like cold water, and I wanted to clap like an idiot in an airplane seat, because how many of you have lived through that? A family member slaps a label on you, unstable, dramatic, confused, and suddenly everyone acts like the label is evidence. The judge then turned to my parents' attorney, and you could hear the legal smoothness come out. Your Honor, we filed in good faith based on information provided to our office, and the judge asked the simplest, most devastating question. Information provided by whom? There was a pause, a fraction of a second too long, and then the attorney said, by our clients, Your Honor. And then, in the most surgical tone, the judge said, and your clients appear to have initiated an airport police report and then contacted an airline to cancel Miss Monroe's travel based on claims she was not safe to fly. When I heard that, I didn't feel triumph. I felt something steadier, like watching someone finally read the instruction manual to the trap my parents thought was invisible. My father tried to act offended. We were trying to protect the public, and the judge's voice went colder. Protect the public from what exactly? A probate hearing? That line landed so hard, I could almost hear the air shift in the room because it exposed the absurdity. It stripped the costume off the lie. Then the clerk read my airport incident number into the record, and I heard the clerk say my father's name clearly, Grant Monroe, and I swear names sound different in court. In court, names are weight, names are accountability. Elliot whispered, he's not happy, and then the judge said, Ms. Monroe, are you present by phone? Elliot moved the phone closer, and I felt my throat tighten because this was the moment they tried to steal from me. Not money, not a house. The right to be treated like a participant in my own family story. Yes, Your Honor, I said, and I kept my voice steady even though my hands were gripping my armrest so hard my nails hurt. I am on an aircraft in transit due to the interference described in my exhibits. I am available for testimony, and I request to be heard. And the judge paused and then said the sentence that finally made me feel like a human being instead of a problem file. You are heard. I sat there, staring at the plane window, watching clouds slide by like nothing was happening, while everything was happening, and the judge addressed the courtroom again. Given the credible evidence of interference, I am denying the motion to proceed without Miss Monroe, and I heard my mother make that little sound again, but this time it wasn't power, it was panic. The judge wasn't done. I am also denying the request for temporary appointment as personal representatives at this time. Elliot whispered, there it is. And if you've never dealt with the state court, let me translate what that means in plain English. My parents were trying to get the judge to hand them the steering wheel immediately, so they could control the accounts, the house, the documents, and then later say, oh sorry, it's already been handled. And now the judge was refusing to reward obstruction. My father pushed again, desperate now. Your Honor, the estate needs someone responsible. And the judge cut him off without raising his voice, which is the scariest kind of authority, Mr. Monroe. The responsible thing would have been to allow the hearing to proceed fairly. Instead, it appears you attempted to create an absence and then weaponize it. I sat there, and I could feel my heartbeat slow, not because I was calm, because I was locked in, because once a judge says weaponize on the record, your little family drama stops being private. The judge then said, I am continuing this hearing to allow Miss Monroe to appear in person. We will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Tomorrow.
Not today. They didn't get their rushed signature. They didn't get their rubber stamp. And then he added the part that made my mouth go dry. I am directing counsel to provide any communications and records related to the airport report and airline cancellation. Failure to do so may result in sanctions. Additionally, I am referring the conduct described to the appropriate authorities for review. Referral. Authorities. Review. Those are courtroom words that don't go away with a hug and an apology. Elliot pulled away from the courtroom noise and spoke softly like he didn't want to break the spell. Tessa, you're going to land, you're going to sleep, and tomorrow you're going to walk into that courtroom with your head up. What about my parents? I asked, and my voice finally cracked just a little because the betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was documented. Elliot didn't sugarcoat it. They made this bigger than inheritance, he said. They made it about control. I ended the call and sat there with my folder open like it was a shield, and I looked at the call log pages again, and that's when I realized something that made my stomach flip all over again. The call log wasn't just proof of who was with Grandpa, it was proof of who made the decisions that night, and the dispatcher notes had one line in them that I hadn't told anyone yet, not Elliot, not the clerk, not even myself out loud, because once you say it, it becomes real, and that line didn't just threaten my parents' case. It threatened their entire story about how Grandpa died, and as the plane hummed and people around me opened snacks like it was an ordinary day, I understood the next fight wasn't going to be about whether I get a share. It was going to be about what my parents did before he even passed, and why they were so terrified of that log being read in open court. And then my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. Just 6 words, no greeting, no signature. Stop digging or you'll regret it. And I stared at it long enough to feel my blood turn cold because that wasn't my mother's style, and it definitely wasn't my father's handwriting. And that's when I knew this wasn't just family betrayal anymore. This was somebody outside the family leaning into it. And the only question left was who my parents had involved behind my back. My stomach stayed cold for the rest of that flight. Not the nervous kind of cold, the surgical kind. The kind you get when you realize you're not just fighting for fairness anymore. You're fighting because somebody is actively trying to make you stop existing inside the record. And that unknown text sat on my screen like a cigarette burn on a white shirt. Stop digging or you'll regret it. And I kept staring at the sender number because I wanted it to magically turn into a name, but it was just digits, anonymous, confident, and that confidence is what scared me, because my mother's threats come wrapped in guilt and my father's threats come wrapped in professionalism. But this was clean and sharp, like it came from someone who doesn't need to win emotionally. They only need you to comply. The seatbelt light finally clicked off, and the guy next to me immediately ordered a ginger ale like his biggest enemy that day was dehydration, and I almost envied him. I almost envied normal problems, but then I looked down at my folder again. The call log pages flattened on the tray like they were sacred, and I told myself one thing: keep moving, keep your hands steady, and don't make decisions while you're shaking inside. When we landed, I didn't stroll off the plane like a travel blogger. I moved like a person with a clock in her throat, and the first thing I did was turn my phone on fully and watch it explode with notifications like fireworks I didn't ask for. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, 1 voicemail from an unknown number, and an email from the court clerk confirming the continuance to tomorrow at 9 a.m., and then another email, this one from Elliot, subject line short and blunt, "Do not engage," and inside he wrote, "Do not respond to threats, do not post online, do not talk to your parents without me present, keep every message, and meet me at 7:45 a.m. at the courthouse steps." That's the thing about good attorneys, they don't soothe you. They give you instructions like a medic. I walked straight to baggage claim even though I had only a carry-on because I needed the cameras, I needed my movements documented, and I stood under that harsh airport lighting where everyone looks tired and slightly guilty, and I called the number back, not the unknown threat number. I called the voicemail number that left me a message, and it rang once and went to a robotic greeting, and then the voice started. It was my father. Calm. Low. The voice he uses when he wants to sound like a man carrying a burden. "Tessa," he said, "you're embarrassing yourself and you're embarrassing this family, and you're going to regret what you're doing. Come to your senses. We can still settle this quietly." Quietly. That word. Quietly is always code for without witnesses. I deleted nothing. I saved it. Then I called Elliot back and told him about the unknown text and the voicemail. He didn't gasp or react big. He said, "Forward both to me right now." And then he added, "And listen carefully, if you see anyone you don't recognize near you tonight, don't confront them. You walk into a hotel lobby or a busy place and you call me. You know it's bad when your attorney starts giving you safety instructions like you're in a messy divorce with someone unstable. Except my someone was my parents, and that thought hit me so hard I had to sit down on a bench near the vending machines for a second and pretend I was just a tired traveler. I booked a hotel 5 minutes from the courthouse, not because I couldn't afford something nicer, but because proximity is control, and I told the front desk, no calls to my room, no room number given out, and if anyone asks for me, you tell them I'm not registered. The clerk nodded like she'd heard it before and slid my keycard across, and that tiny moment reminded me, you are not the first person to be hunted by people who claim they love you. In my room, I did the unsexy work that actually wins cases. I made copies. I photographed everything. I uploaded the call log photos to 2 separate cloud folders. I emailed myself the files. I took screenshots of the threat text, the voicemail transcript, the airline note page, and the airport instant slip, and then I wrote a timeline in plain English, with times and locations, like a detective building a board with strings, because courts don't care about vibes, courts care about sequence. At midnight, I finally opened the call log again, and forced myself to read the dispatcher notes slowly, not skimming, not guessing, reading each line like it could bite, and that's when I saw the line that made my throat tighten the way it had on the plane. It wasn't just caller coherent or family present. It said, in the dispatch notes, caller reports son-in-law refusing transport, states, he's not going to the hospital, he already changed it. Son-in-law. That wasn't my father. That was my mother's husband, my stepfather, Wade Monroe, the man who always smiled too wide at funerals and called me kiddo like we were close. And then the next line, even worse, caller states patient requested to speak privately, request denied by family. That wasn't probate drama. That was obstruction on a night my grandfather might have been begging for help. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, and my brain started doing that ugly thing where it replays memories with new subtitles, like the last holiday when Grandpa tried to pull me aside and my mom said, he's tired, leave him alone, like she was protecting him, and now I couldn't tell if she was protecting him or managing him. I stared at that call log until my eyes hurt, and I had one of those neurotic, intrusive thoughts that feels cruel but refuses to leave. What if Grandpa didn't just die? What if he was handled? What if the will wasn't the only thing they controlled? I told myself, don't spiral, stay factual, but the body doesn't care about your logic. The body knows betrayal before the mind catches up. And right there, before I tell you what happened the next morning, I need you to do one thing for me, because I want to see where this is hitting people. Where are you watching from right now, and what would you do if your own parents tried to label you dangerous just to keep you out of court? Type your city and state in the comments, and be honest, would you go quiet to keep the peace? Or would you show up anyway like I did? I barely slept. Not because I was scared of court. I'm good in professional rooms. I'm good when there are rules. I couldn't sleep because I kept picturing Grandpa trying to speak and being blocked, and every time I drifted off, my brain snapped awake like it was yelling, don't you dare miss this. At 6:30 a.m., I met Elliot in the hotel lobby because I wasn't walking into that courthouse alone like some naive character in a movie. Elliot wore the same suit from yesterday and carried a thin folder like a weapon, and the first thing he said was, you got the call log? And I nodded and he said, good, because their new angle today is going to be concern for your mental health. They couldn't win on absence, so now they'll try to win on credibility. We drove to the courthouse in his car because it had tinted windows and because, frankly, I didn't trust my own car not to have a flat tire or a mysterious new problem, and as we pulled into the lot I saw them. My parents, Grant and Linda Monroe, standing near the entrance like they owned the building. My father in a navy suit, my mother in a soft cardigan like she was auditioning for Worried Mom. And with them was Wade, my stepfather, hands in his pockets, looking relaxed, like this was a PDA meeting, not a fight over Grandpa's legacy. The rage hit me so fast it almost made me nauseous. Elliot put a hand up, not touching me, just signaling, stay calm. We got out, and my father smiled like a man who thinks the room always bends toward him. There she is, he said, loud enough for passers-by to hear, and that was intentional. He wanted witnesses to see him as the welcoming one. Tessa, honey, my mother said, voice sweet. We've been so worried. Worry. Always worry. The same word they used with the airline, the same word they used with police, and suddenly I could see the script in their hands like cue cards. Elliot stepped between us slightly. "Mr. and Mrs. Monroe," he said, polite but cold. "All communication goes through counsel." My father's smile tightened. "We're her parents," he said. "We're allowed to speak to our daughter." Elliot didn't flinch. "You're allowed to speak," he replied, "and she's allowed not to respond." And then Wade, my stepfather, finally spoke, and his voice was the worst part because it was casual, friendly, the voice you'd use to borrow a ladder. "Tess, let's not do this the hard way. Your granddad's gone. Fighting won't bring him back." And there it was, the moral manipulation dressed as wisdom. I looked directly at him and said, "You were there the night he died, weren't you?" His smile flickered, just for a half second, and my mother jumped in fast. "This isn't the place," she said. That's not true. Not, what do you mean?" "Just, this isn't the place." That's how you know you hit something real. We walked into the courthouse, and I could feel my parents trailing a few steps behind, like they wanted the optics of unity, like if a stranger glanced over, they'd see family, not predators. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Elliot leaned in and said, "Whatever you do, don't argue with them out there. If they want a scene, it's because scenes create stories, and stories are what they trade in." Then he added, quieter, "The judge requested the airline and airport communications in discovery language. That's not a slap on the wrist. That's a warning." We entered the courtroom, and I finally saw the judge's face. Not dramatic. Tired. The kind of tired you get from seeing too many families pretend money is love. He looked at my parents like he already knew what they were. He looked at me like a person, not a label. And that alone almost broke me. The hearing started, and my father's attorney began with a clean, practiced line about concern for the integrity of the estate administration. And then my mother's attorney, yes, she had her own, started hinting that I was emotionally compromised and prone to impulsive behavior. And I watched my mother nod like she was agreeing with a diagnosis, and my body wanted to stand up and scream. But I kept my hands folded because I wasn't going to give them a single screenshot moment. Elliot stood and spoke like a scalpel. He referenced the incident number. He referenced the airline record. He referenced the judge's denial yesterday. Then he said, "Your Honor, there is an additional exhibit that bears directly on the claims of capacity and undue influence." He held up the call log. My father's face tightened. Wade shifted his weight. My mother's fingers gripped her purse like it was a rosary. The judge leaned forward slightly, and he said, "Proceed." And as Elliot began to summarize what the dispatch notes actually said, I saw my mother's attorney whisper to her, urgent, like damage control, and I realized something terrifying and clarifying at the same time. They weren't just scared of losing the inheritance. They were scared of the story of that night being told in a courtroom, under rules, where lying has consequences. And as Elliot turned toward the judge with the next page in his hand, my phone buzzed in my pocket again. One vibration. And I didn't look, but I knew it was another attempt to shove me off balance right as the truth was about to surface. My phone buzzed again right as Elliot held that next page up, and I kept my face still because that's what they wanted. They wanted me distracted, flustered, reaching for my pocket like a guilty person. So I didn't move, and I let it vibrate itself into silence like a tantrum that wouldn't get fed, and Elliot kept going, calm and exact. "Your Honor, this C80 report and dispatch summary is from the night Harold Monroe died." And he said my grandfather's name the way you say a fact you can prove, not the way you say a memory you can argue about. And the judge looked down at the paper like he was reading the heartbeat of the case, and my father's attorney tried to interrupt with this smooth little cough and a half raise of the hand like, "Objection, relevance." But the judge didn't even look up, he just said, "Counsel, sit." And something in the air changed, because the judge wasn't just annoyed anymore. He was locked in. Elliot pointed to the line that mattered, the one I'd read until it burned, and he didn't dramatize it. He just placed it on the table like a knife. Dispatcher notes indicate a family member refused transport and stated, quote, "He's not going to the hospital. He already changed it," end quote. And the courtroom got quiet in that specific way where even the ceiling feels like it's listening, and my mother's eyes widened just a fraction and then hardened, which told me she wasn't shocked. She was calculating. The judge finally lifted his eyes, not at me, not at Elliot, at my stepfather Wade, and he asked, "Mr. Monroe, were you present at the residence that night?" And Wade's mouth opened like he was going to give a charming answer, but Elliot cut in fast. "Your Honor, we are not calling witnesses yet, but yes, he was present and he is the family member referenced." And that is when my father stood up without permission, palms out like a man trying to appear reasonable. "Your Honor, this is a mischaracterization," he said. "My father-in-law was elderly and confused, and my daughter has been spiraling. She's taking bits of paperwork and turning them into conspiracies." And he said spiraling like he was handing the judge a label to slap on me, so he wouldn't have to argue the facts. And the judge stared at him with that flat stare that says, "You're not as smart as you think you are," and he said, "Mr. Holloway, you will speak through counsel." And then he turned to the attorneys and said, "Capacity and undue influence are central issues here, and this law goes directly to the timeline and access, so I'm allowing it." My mother's attorney tried a different angle, softer voice. "Your Honor, the family was managing a medical crisis and emotions run high, and Miss Holloway has admitted she believes her parents are targeting her." And I almost laughed because the proof was literally sitting on the bench like a brick, but I didn't, I just watched, because watching is how you learn what people do when their mask slips. Elliot asked permission to approach, and he handed the judge a highlighted copy, then handed another to opposing counsel, and my father's attorney took it like it was dirty, flipped through, and you could see him realizing in real time that his client had fed him a story that couldn't survive daylight. The judge tapped the page with his pen and said, "The note says patient requested to speak privately and request was denied by family." And he looked at my mother now. "Mrs. Holloway, why would family deny a dying man privacy?" And my mother's face did this strange thing, half wounded, half offended, like the question itself was unfair, and she said, "Because he was not in his right mind." And the judge asked, "A dispatcher wrote that he requested privacy, not that he was incoherent, do you have medical evidence he lacked capacity at that time?" And my mother's attorney jumped in with, "We have medical records." And the judge said, "Then bring them, because right now what I see is a coordinated effort to block access," and then later claim confusion. Coordinated. That word landed heavy. My father's attorney tried to salvage with procedure. "Your Honor, even if this log is accepted, it doesn't determine the distribution." And the judge nodded like, "Yes, I know how my job works," and then he said, "It does, however, inform me about credibility and conduct." And he paused, and you could feel the courtroom lean forward without moving. And then he said, "Yesterday, this court addressed an attempted interference with travel and false representations about detention. Today, I am looking at a document suggesting someone present at the death scene referenced a will change as a reason to refuse transport." My father's jaw clenched so hard, I could see the muscle jump. Wade's eyes moved to my mother like he wanted a cue. My mother stared straight ahead like a person trying not to blink in a windstorm. And that's when the bailiff stepped up quietly and handed the judge a note, and the judge read it, and his eyes narrowed, and he looked straight at me. "Miss Holloway," he said, "your counsel indicates you received additional communications during this hearing." My throat tightened. Elliot glanced at me like, "Don't lie, don't embellish," and I nodded once and said, "Yes, Your Honor." My phone buzzed. "I have not checked it." The judge held my gaze a second longer than necessary and said, "Check it now on the record." That sentence made my skin prickle because it meant the court was about to drag whatever my parents were doing into daylight, and I reached into my pocket slowly, like I was handling a live wire, pulled the phone out, and turned the screen toward myself. One new message, unknown number, and it said, "Last warning. Leave the courthouse or we send the wellness team to your hotel." Wellness team. That phrase made the room tilt because that's not a random threat. That's a tactic. That's what people say when they're planning to call someone in with authority to make you look unstable. My fingers went cold, but my voice stayed steady. "Your Honor, the message says, quote, 'Last warning. Leave the courthouse or we send the wellness team to your hotel.'" End quote. You could hear a tiny ripple, not chatter, just that human sound when people realize a family fight is about to become a legal problem. The judge's eyes cut to my father's attorney. "Counsel," he said, "do your clients have any knowledge of this?" And my father's attorney did the thing lawyers do when they feel the floor shift under them. He looked at his client instead of answering. My father stood again. Too fast. This is ridiculous, he snapped. She's doing this for attention. And the judge held up a hand like stop, and he said, Mr. Holloway, you're making this worse. And then he looked at me and said, Miss Holloway, screenshot it and provide it to your counsel and the clerk. And then he said something that made my stomach drop and my chest lift at the same time. This court will not allow intimidation tactics, disguised as concern, to manipulate these proceedings. Disguised as concern. That was my parents' whole religion. My mother's attorney tried to soften it. Your Honor, we have been concerned about her mental health. And the judge cut him off. Then you should have sought proper evaluation through proper channels, not attempted to fabricate detention records, cancel flights, and move hearings without notice. And then he turned to my father's attorney and said, I'm ordering an evidentiary hearing on conduct and interference. And the words evidentiary hearing sound boring until you realize it means bring witnesses, bring records, bring the truth, and my father's attorney's face went pale, because that's where private family cruelty goes to die. Elliot leaned in and whispered, This is what accountability looks like. Stay calm. My father finally sat, but he wasn't calm. He was furious, and he leaned toward my mother and hissed something I couldn't hear, and my mother's face tightened like she was trying to hold her expression together with staples. Wade shifted again and stared at the floor. The judge continued, For tomorrow, I want the court to have the full C80 report, the audio if available, the medical records cited, and any communications from the parties regarding travel and scheduling. And then he looked directly at my parents and said, And you will not contact the airline, law enforcement, or any third party to interfere with the other party's attendance again. Again. Like he already knew it wasn't a one-time mistake. My father's attorney tried to ask for a sidebar, and the judge allowed it. And they huddled near the bench, and I watched my father's posture change from confident to cornered, and I realized something ugly and important. He wasn't afraid of losing the inheritance as much as he was afraid of losing control of the narrative, because money is replaceable to men like him, but reputation is oxygen. While they whispered, I looked down at my hands and noticed I'd been pressing my thumb into my palm hard enough to leave a crescent mark, and I forced myself to loosen it because the body remembers what the mouth won't say. Elliot handed me a sticky note under the table with one line written in block letters. Do not go back to hotel alone. That's when I understood the wellness team threat wasn't random. It was a plan, and if my parents could get police or social services to show up and make a scene, even if it went nowhere, they could still walk into court and say, See, we told you she's unstable. And the part that made me sick was how familiar that tactic is. It's the modern version of locking a woman in the attic and calling it love. The judge ended the session with a firm warning about sanctions, and as people stood and chairs scraped, my mother turned slightly like she wanted to catch my eye, and for a split second I thought I saw fear. Not for me, for herself, because she could finally feel consequences breathing behind her. Outside in the hallway, Wade stepped in front of me fast, too fast, and said, low voice, Tessa, you're making dangerous enemies. And I looked at him and asked, Are you threatening me? And he smiled a thin smile and said, I'm warning you. And then my father's hand landed on Wade's shoulder like a leash, and he pulled him back, and he leaned toward me close enough that only I could hear and said, You can't win this. We know things about your grandfathers, well, that you don't. And then he walked away like he just dropped a casual fact, and my stomach turned because that wasn't a bluff. That sounded like a man who'd already hidden the next card. Elliot guided me toward the exit and kept his eyes scanning the hallway like he didn't trust anyone, and as we stepped into the sunlight, he said, They just tipped their hand. There's another document or another witness or another story they're planning to introduce. We're going to find it first. And I swear to you, right then, as my phone sat heavy in my palm with that threat still glowing in a screenshot, I realized the inheritance was never the only prize. The real prize was who gets believed when the dust settles, and my parents were willing to drag uniforms, courts, and strangers into it just to make sure the world believed their version of me. But I was done being a version. And the next move I made was the one they absolutely did not expect, because instead of running back to my hotel like a frightened daughter, I followed Elliot to a place that keeps records the way churches keep confession. And when you hear what we pulled from that file cabinet, You'll understand why my father looked so sure I couldn't win. Elliot didn't take me back to the hotel because the hotel was the stage they threatened to storm, and he didn't take me to some cozy coffee shop either because cozy is where people get sloppy. He took me somewhere fluorescent and boring and safe, the Rio Arriba County Records Annex, a low building behind the courthouse that looked like it existed purely to crush hope, and the second we walked in, the air smelled like toner and old paper and the kind of government carpet that has survived 3 decades of secrets, and I remember thinking, my parents love weapons that look polite, and then realizing records are the same thing, except records don't care who cries the loudest. Elliot kept his voice low. We're not chasing drama, Tessa, we're chasing dates. And he said dates like they were fingerprints, and the clerk at the counter looked up at us with tired eyes that had seen every kind of family war, and Elliot slid his bar card across the counter and said, we need the full probate file history, including any prior wills lodged, any amendments, any attorney-submitted exhibits, and any property-related filings connected to Harold Monroe and the Monroe Trust. And the clerk's eyebrows lifted a fraction at the word trust, because trust means there's usually more than one drawer in the story. She typed slowly, nails clicking, and then she said, you'll need a formal request for archived attachments, and Elliot nodded like he expected resistance. We have a hearing continuation order and the judge's directive to produce related communications. And he handed her a copy of the judge's note, and the clerk's demeanor changed, not friendly, but obedient in the way the system gets when a judge has already sniffed smoke. She disappeared through a door marked staff only, and Elliot leaned toward me and said, your father just told you he knows something about the will you don't, which means he's either bluffing or he's counting on a record you haven't seen. And I asked, what kind of record? And Elliot didn't sugarcoat. A prior will, a codicil, a property transfer, a medical capacity statement, or a signed note that looks harmless until it's used in court. And he paused. And because they try to paint you as unstable, I'm also thinking they've used the health system before, which means there may be a paper trail outside probate. My stomach tightened because I heard it, the way he said before, like this wasn't their first time aiming an institution at someone in the family. While we waited, my phone buzzed again, and I didn't even have to look to feel my body go rigid, but Elliot held out his hand. Not demanding, just a quiet anchor. Let me see. And I handed it over. Another message from that unknown number. You can still fix this. Tell the judge you overreacted, and we'll help you. Help you. The nastiest phrase in family betrayal, because it's not help, it's a leash disguised as a blanket. Elliot screenshot it, emailed it to himself and the clerk's inbox and said, do not respond. And I wanted to respond so badly, not to beg, to slice, to say something that would make them feel even 1% of the panic they'd made me feel at the airport. But I didn't, because Elliot was right. The fastest way to lose is to give your enemy a quote. Then the clerk came back with a cart, an actual cart, like we were in a library thriller, and she parked it in front of us and said, here's the file is lodged. And Elliot asked, are there supplemental exhibits? And she said, there are attachments in the archive system, some not previously pulled. And she lowered her voice. A prior will was lodged in 2017, and my chest went cold because there it was. Not a bluff, a prior will sitting in a drawer, like a ghost waiting for someone to name it. Elliot's eyes flicked to me, just one look, not fear, more like, this is why they were so confident, and he said to the clerk, pull it, and she hesitated. It's sealed as an attachment pending contest, and Elliot said, we have an active contest, and he slid another form forward. The clerk left again. While she was gone, Elliot started flipping through the docket notes, and he didn't skim like a normal person, he read like a hunter, date by date, who filed what, when, and why, and I watched him stop at one entry and tap it twice with his pen. Emergency accommodation request, he murmured. Filed this morning. But it references ongoing safety concerns documented previously, and he looked up. That's where the wellness team threat comes from. They're trying to create continuity. Not one incident. A pattern. I asked, documented where? And he said, probably family court, maybe a prior welfare check, maybe a medical hold attempt, maybe a restraining order request that went nowhere, but even a failed attempt leaves paper, and paper is what they live on. Let me ask you something right here because I want your honest take. If you were in my shoes and your own parents were trying to build a file that makes you look dangerous, would you stay polite to keep peace? Or would you go scorched earth and expose everything even if it shattered the family image? Because I know what I wanted to do in that moment. I wanted to drag the whole truth into the sunlight and let it burn like disinfectant. But I also knew one wrong move could hand them exactly what they were trying to manufacture. The clerk returned with a manila envelope and slid it across the desk like she didn't want it touching her skin, and she said, "Do not remove originals. Copies only," and Elliot nodded. "Understood." And he opened it carefully, and the first page hit me like a slap, because it wasn't a will that left everything to my parents. It wasn't a will that cut me out, it was worse. It was a will that made me look like the problem. It named me, yes, as a beneficiary, but with a condition, and conditions are how families control you from beyond the grave. It said any distribution to me could be held in trust, at the discretion of the personal representative if beneficiary exhibits impaired judgment or inability to manage funds. And my throat tightened because that language was basically a loaded gun. All they had to do was keep calling me unstable, and then they could argue they needed control for my own good. Elliot exhaled quietly and said, "This is a trap document." And I whispered, "Did Grandpa write this?" And Elliot didn't answer fast. He looked at the signature block, the witness names, the notary stamp, and then he said, "He may have signed it, but signing isn't the same as understanding, and the timing is interesting." And he flipped to the last page. "Executed in 2017, after your parents moved back into his orbit, before his health declined." My mind started connecting dots like stitches pulling tight. My parents had been building a cage for years, not just trying to steal money, trying to steal autonomy. Then Elliot tapped the witness line. "Wade Monroe witnessed this." And my stomach dropped because Wade was my stepfather, the man who just warned me outside the courtroom like he was concerned, the same man who was present the night Grandpa died, and now apparently present the day this will got signed. And Elliot's voice went colder. That's conflict, and it's leverage. The clerk watched us like she wanted to pretend she wasn't listening, but she absolutely was, and Elliot said, loud enough for the clerk to hear without sounding like he meant it for her, "We will subpoena the drafting attorney." And then he looked at me. Because whoever wrote this, wrote it to be used. My phone buzzed again, and this time it was a voicemail notification, and the number wasn't unknown. It was my mother's number, and Elliot looked at me and said, "Let's listen together, because alone is where guilt works best," and he put it on speaker right there in that fluorescent room. My mother's voice came through sweet, trembly, performing. "Tessa, honey, I'm scared. Your father is scared. You're acting out of grief, and you're going to regret this. Please stop. If you don't, we'll have no choice but to tell the court about the things we've been protecting you from." And then her voice sharpened just a hair. "You don't want people knowing what happened in Denver, do you?" And my skin went ice cold because Denver was real. Denver was the one time years ago I'd called them crying because I'd had a panic attack in a hotel after a toxic boss cornered me at a conference. And my mother had taken that vulnerable moment and turned it into a bullet she could fire whenever she needed me small. Elliot stopped the voicemail halfway through and said, "There it is." Blackmail dressed as concern, and I could feel my face flush with humiliation, not because I'd done something wrong, but because they were willing to weaponize the weakest hour of my life to steal from me. Elliot leaned closer. "Did you ever seek treatment or make any reports about that Denver incident?" And I nodded. "I saw a counselor for a few months," and Elliot's eyes narrowed. "Good. Because treatment records can show you're responsible, not unstable, and if they try to twist it, we can flip it." Then he pointed at the 2017 will again. "This document plus the wellness team threat tells me they're planning a guardianship angle." And I said, "They already said it in a text," and Elliot nodded. "They're not just trying to win probate. They're trying to control you as a witness." The clerk cleared her throat and said, "If you need certified copies, you'll need to request now." And Elliot asked for certified copies of everything, the 2017 attachment, the filing history, the emergency accommodation motion, the communications logs, and when he spoke, he sounded calm, but I could hear the steel under it, like a man building a case brick by brick. On the walkout, my father's threat replayed in my head. "We know things about your grandfathers, well, that you don't." And now I knew what he meant. He meant this 2017 trap will, the one designed to make me look like a risk, the one that gave them a legal excuse to protect me right out of my inheritance. Elliot stopped at the curb and looked at me dead serious. "Tonight, you are not going to be alone. Tomorrow, we go back in and we put this in front of the judge." And I asked, "What's the move?" And he said, "We force the court to choose between evidence and theatrics." And he paused. "But there's one more thing we need before tomorrow, because this 2017 will tells me someone tried to rewrite the story years ago, and the only way to beat a rewritten story is to find the original version." Then he opened his car door and said, "We're going to your grandfather's house right now with a court order and a locksmith on standby, because if your parents have been lying this hard, I promise you they've been hiding something physical, and whatever it is, they're going to try to destroy it before morning." Elliot didn't drive fast like in the movies. He drove deliberate, the way people drive when they're trying not to give their enemy an excuse to say they were reckless. And the whole time my brain kept replaying my mother's voicemail like a bad commercial you can't skip. "We're scared. We're protecting you." Because that's what they do. They wrap control in a blanket and then tell you you're ungrateful for not suffocating politely. We pulled into my grandfather Harold Monroe's neighborhood just as the sun started dropping, that late-day light that makes every front lawn look like it's posing for a real estate listing. And I swear even the houses looked like they were holding their breath, because everyone knew Harold's place, the corner lot with the flagpole and the wide porch and the lilac bushes he trimmed like a ritual, and now it sat quiet, like a closed mouth. Elliot parked half a block away, not because he was being dramatic, because he understood something my parents thought only they knew: people like them don't just lie in court. They manage optics everywhere, and if they saw us pull up, they'd have 5 minutes to start shredding whatever mattered. He handed me a copy of the judge's continuation order and said, "This is not a battering ram, it's permission." And then he nodded toward a man stepping out of a plain white van, mid-50s, thick hands, calm face, carrying a small metal case like a surgeon. "That's Lou," Elliot said, "licensed locksmith, bonded, and he's done this for court matters before, so he won't improvise." Lou shook my hand and said, "Ma'am," like he decided my emotions were not his business. Then he nodded at Elliot's papers and said, "Show me what you need opened and what you need left alone." And that sentence hit me hard because it sounded like safety for the first time all day, boundaries, rules, structure. The exact opposite of my parents' chaos. We walked up the driveway, and my stomach tightened when I saw fresh tire tracks in the gravel near the side gate. New, crisp, like someone had been here recently and wanted to leave quickly, and Elliot saw it too because he crouched and ran his finger along the edge of a track and said quietly, "They've been here." And Lou didn't even look up. He just said, "Then we don't waste time." The front door was locked, but not in my grandfather's way. Not the old brass deadbolt he'd used forever. This was a newer lock, shinier, like someone had changed it fast after he died, and I felt my jaw tighten because who changes the locks on a dead man's house, unless they're trying to control what gets seen? Elliot knocked anyway, loud 3 times, not polite, official, and when nobody answered, he said, "All right," and he gave Lou the nod. Lou set his case down, pulled out tools that looked almost too small to matter, and worked the lock with the calm of a man who has seen families rip each other apart over teaspoons and land deeds, and within a minute, the lock clicked and the door opened like a sigh. The smell inside hit me first: Harold's house smell, lemon oil, old books, coffee, and that faint trace of menthol from the rub he used on his knees, and for a second, I almost forgot we were here for war because the living room still looked like him. The recliner angled toward the TV, the folded throw blanket, the framed photo of me at 12 holding a fish I didn't actually catch, but he let me pose with anyway. Then I saw it, the desk drawer in the hallway table hanging open by an inch, and the hair on my arms lifted because Harold didn't leave drawers half open. He was a close-it-all-the-way man, and Elliot stepped closer and said, "Don't touch anything yet," and he pulled on gloves like we were in a crime scene, because in a way, we were. Lou stayed near the door, eyes scanning, not paranoid, just trained. Elliot took photos first, the open drawer, the scuffed corner of the table, the faint scrape marks on the hardwood like someone had dragged a box and tried to pretend they didn't. Then he opened the drawer with 2 fingers and found it empty except for a single torn envelope, ripped uneven, like someone had opened it in a rush. He held it up and read the back flap, and I saw Harold's handwriting in blue ink. "TO be opened only if they try TO move the hearing." And my stomach flipped because that wasn't just a note. That was my grandfather anticipating the exact play my parents made today. Elliot didn't smile, but his eyes hardened into something satisfied and dangerous. He knew, he said, and I whispered, "Where's what was inside?" And Elliot looked at me. "That's why we're here before morning." And then he said something that made my chest tighten. "If your parents were smart, they'd have taken it already. If they were desperate, they'd be trying to find it right now." We moved through the house in a slow sweep, not rummaging, documenting, because Elliot kept repeating, "We don't just need truth, we need admissible truth." And that's a lesson I wish every person dealing with family betrayal understood. You can be right and still lose if you can't prove it in a way the system recognizes. In the kitchen, the trash can was half full, but the top layer was shredded paper, long strips, fresh, still curling like it hadn't settled, and I felt my throat tighten because shredding is such a guilty sound even when it's silent. Elliot pulled the bag out carefully, tied it, labeled it with date and time, and said, "This stays sealed," and Lou muttered, "Some folks don't even wait until the body's cold," and I swear I felt rage and grief punch each other in my chest like two animals fighting in a cage. We reached Harold's office, the small back room where he kept his checkbook and his files, and the little lockbox he used to joke was where I hide the government secrets, and the desk drawers were open. Not all the way, but enough to show someone had been hunting fast. Elliot crouched, looked under the desk, and then he froze, and when Elliot freezes, it means something is either very good or very bad. He pointed to the carpet near the wall, a rectangle of slightly different color, like something heavy had sat there for years and been moved recently, and he said quietly, "A safe." And Lou stepped in, scanned the wall with his eyes, and said, "There's a patch job here." And he tapped the drywall lightly, hollow sound, and my pulse started thumping in my ears. Elliot turned to me and asked, "Did Harold ever mention a wall safe?" And I shook my head and he nodded, "Of course he didn't." And then he said, "Because he didn't trust the people who would overhear you." Right here, I want to ask you something, because I know you've seen families do ugly things when money gets involved. If you were me, standing in a dead man's office, finding signs of a hidden safe, would you assume your parents are just grieving and messy? Or would you call it what it is, a burglary with nicer clothes? Because I'm telling you, the older I get, the more I realize betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with quiet hands and a smile at church. And before we go further, tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, city and state if you feel comfortable, because I want to see how many of us have lived some version of this, and I want you to know you're not crazy for feeling it in your bones. Lou pulled out a small stud finder, ran it along the wall, found an odd gap. Then he looked at Elliot. "You want this opened under authority," and Elliot held up the order again. "We're securing potential estate documents and preventing spoliation," and Lou nodded like that phrase was his kind of music. He made a small cut at the edge of the patch, careful, surgical, and behind it, metal, gray and cold, a recessed safe door with a simple dial. "Old school," Lou said. Harold was smart. And then he glanced at me. Old school means no digital log, but it also means someone had to know it was here. That sentence made my stomach drop because my parents didn't just find it by accident. They had to know, or Wade had to know, or someone close to Harold had to know, which meant the betrayal might have started long before the airport. Lou worked the dial with a stethoscope-looking tool, listening, turning, pausing, and my mind kept jumping to my father's voice on that airport recording, so confident. I'm scared for the public, and I wanted to laugh at how ridiculous it was, because the only thing he was scared of was paper. The safe clicked open, Lou swung the door, and inside were three things that made the room feel suddenly smaller: a manila folder labeled Originals, a small stack of envelopes, and a USB drive taped to the back wall with painter's tape like Harold didn't trust gravity. Elliot pulled everything out with gloved hands, set it on the desk, and photographed it before opening because, again, proof has to be clean. He opened the Originals folder first, and his eyes scanned the top page, and I saw his throat move like he swallowed something heavy. "Tessa," he said, "you need to see this." And he slid the page toward me. It was a handwritten letter in Harold's handwriting, dated 2 months before he died, and the first line knocked the air out of my chest. "If you are reading this, it means Grant and Linda tried to keep you from court." My knees went weak, not from sadness, from the shock of being seen by someone who is already gone. The letter continued, and every line felt like Harold speaking directly into the future. They will say you are unstable. They will say I was confused. They will claim you are a danger because it sounds official. Do not let them. They are not protecting anyone. They are protecting their control. Elliot's voice went low. He predicted their script, and I whispered, "What else is in there?" And Elliot flipped the next page. Attached was a notarized statement from Harold describing the exact night he changed his will, who was present, who pressured him, and why he made changes. Names, dates, times. And the next attachment was a copy of a prior draft will, not the 2017 trap, a newer one, signed last year, naming me as primary beneficiary and explicitly disqualifying my parents from serving as personal representatives due to prior attempts to interfere with my testamentary intent. I felt my throat tighten because that phrase, prior attempts, meant this wasn't new. They'd tried before, and Harold had written it down like a man leaving breadcrumbs in the dark. Then Elliot picked up the USB drive and said, "If this is what I think it is," and Lou, still by the door, muttered, "Please tell me that old man recorded something," and Elliot didn't answer yet because his phone buzzed, and when he looked at the screen, his face changed. "They're here," he said, voice flat, and he tilted the phone so I could see the alert, motion detected, front porch camera because Elliot had quietly asked Lou to place a temporary door sensor earlier, and now it was pinging. My chest went cold and hot at the same time. Elliot slid the originals into his briefcase and said, "We don't confront them alone." And Lou stepped closer and said, "Ma'am, stay behind me." And then we heard it, a car door slam outside, fast, angry, and my mother's voice through the porch glass. Too bright, too fake. "Hello? Anybody inside?" Like she was checking on a neighbor, not breaking into a dead man's safe. Elliot whispered, "No matter what they say, you do not engage emotionally," and I nodded. But my heart was pounding because the last thing my parents expected was that we'd find the safe before they could clean it out, and the last thing they could afford was me walking into court tomorrow with Harold's letter, his notarized statement, and whatever was on that USB. The doorknob started turning, not gently, testing, and my father's voice followed, low and irritated. "It's locked, because of course she changed it." And I realized in that second they weren't just here to talk. They were here to retrieve, and Elliot's mouth tightened as he pulled out his phone to call it in, because now this wasn't just probate, this was active interference, and as the door rattled again, harder, I looked down at Harold's letter on the desk, my grandfather's handwriting, staring back at me like a warning and a promise at the same time, and all I could think was, if they're this desperate to get inside tonight, whatever's on that USB drive is going to blow their entire story apart tomorrow. The next sound was my father's knuckles hitting the door like he owned the wood, and I swear I could hear the smile in his voice when he said, "Tessa, open up, we just want to talk," because that's the oldest trick in the book. Talk means surrender. Talk means let us get close enough to twist you again. Elliot didn't argue through the door. He didn't shout. He didn't do any of that emotional stuff my parents were hoping for. He stepped to the side, dialed, and spoke into his phone like he was ordering coffee. "This is Attorney Elliot Lane. I'm at 117 Lila Corner in Rio Arriba County. I have a court continuation order, and we have individuals attempting unlawful entry into the decedent's residence while estate documents are being secured. Please dispatch." Lou kept his body between me and the entryway, and he said under his breath, "Don't say a word to them." And I nodded because I could feel my mouth wanting to spit out years of sentences I never got to say. But that's what they want. They want you to talk so they can later say you threatened them. The doorknob rattled again, harder, and my mother's voice rose into that sweet, wounded tone she uses like perfume. "Tessa, honey, don't do this, you're scaring us." And I almost laughed because she had literally just tried to brand me a public threat at an airport, and now she was standing on a porch pretending I was the one creating danger. Elliot glanced at me and mouthed, "Record." So I lifted my phone, hit video, and kept it pointed at the door. "Not for drama, for evidence." My father said, louder now, "We know you're in there, and we know you took things that don't belong to you." And that sentence landed like a confession because a normal person doesn't show up to a dead man's house at night accusing someone of taking things, unless they know exactly what's missing. Lou leaned closer to the door and spoke for the first time, calm but firm. "This property is secured for probate. You need to step off the porch." Law enforcement has been called. And that's when the mask slipped. My father's voice turned sharp, not worried anymore. Who the hell are you? And Lou didn't flinch. A locksmith. Licensed. And I don't care who you are. My mother tried a different angle, the martyr one. You're destroying this family, Tessa. Your grandfather would be ashamed. And my chest tightened because they always use the dead as puppets. The dead can't correct them. And then my father hissed, if you don't open this door, you'll regret it. And I swear the porch light seemed harsher in that moment, like the house itself was done pretending this was a normal family disagreement. Elliot stayed quiet, but he moved with purpose. He slid his briefcase under the desk, pushed the letter and notarized statement into a folder, and then he looked me straight in the eyes and said softly, whatever happens, we already won the part that matters. We secured the originals. And that sentence hit me like oxygen because my parents' whole plan depended on erasing me, and now they couldn't. Outside, my father tried the door again, and then, because he's always been a coward who prefers systems to fists, he barked, Linda, call the police and tell them she's inside with documents and she's threatening us. And I felt my stomach drop because of course he would. He was going to do it again, weaponize another institution. But Elliot lifted his phone and said, still calm, already done, Grant. And they're coming for the attempted entry, not your performance. There was a brief silence, and then my mother's voice changed, less sweet, more desperate. Tessa, please. Please. We just need to look for the insurance papers and the deed and the bank statements. We're trying to settle things quickly. And that's the part that makes people doubt themselves, because it sounds reasonable if you don't know the history, but Elliot said through the door, if you needed paperwork, you would have requested it through counsel. You're here because you're trying to destroy or remove it. My father spat, you don't know what you're talking about, and Elliot answered, I know exactly what I'm talking about. You tried to stop her at the airport. You canceled her flight. You filed a motion based on a false detention claim. And now you're on a porch trying to force entry. This is a pattern. That word pattern is the one that kills liars, because a single lie can be explained away, but a pattern becomes intent. Then the sound of sirens threaded through the street, distant at first, then closer, and my mother's voice went small. Grant, we should go. And my father snapped, no, because he's allergic to losing in public. But the sirens got louder, and then a cruiser rolled up, lights flashing across Harold's curtains like blue and red water. And I realized my parents weren't thinking about consequences anymore. They were thinking about control. And control makes people stupid. Elliot opened the door just a crack, enough to show his face and his badge, and he stepped onto the porch with his hands visible, papers in the other hand, and the deputy, a woman with tired eyes and a no-nonsense posture, said, What's going on? And my father jumped in immediately. Officer, my daughter is unstable. She's stealing documents. She threatened us, like he was reading from the same script he used at the airport. And the deputy didn't even blink. She just looked at Elliot and said, Sir? And Elliot handed her the continuation order and said, Your Honor's court continued the hearing due to interference. I have originals being secured. These two attempted entry after hours while we were documenting possible spoliation. My father scoffed, That's ridiculous. And the deputy turned her gaze to him, slow, level. Sir, did you try the door? And my father hesitated, and that hesitation was beautiful because it was the sound of a liar realizing there's no good answer. My mother tried to rescue him. We were just knocking. And Lou, standing behind Elliot, said calmly, They rattled the knob repeatedly. I heard threats. I'm a neutral third party. The deputy's face tightened. She looked between them, then at Elliot. You said you called dispatch already? Elliot nodded. Yes. And I would like this documented. They have already attempted to use law enforcement to create false records today. That line made the deputy's eyes sharpen, and she glanced down at her radio like she was connecting to she'd seen 1,000 times, family money fights that spill into fake safety reports. She turned to my father. Sir, I'm going to ask you to step off the porch and provide ID. And my father puffed up. For what? And she said, Because you're being accused of attempted unlawful entry and intimidation connected to a civil proceeding, and I'm not doing this debate on someone's front porch. My mother's mouth opened like she was about to cry, and I swear she can cry on command. but the deputy didn't react. She just repeated, "ID." My father handed it over with that tight little smile people do when they're pretending they're not scared, and the deputy radioed it in. While she did, Elliot turned slightly and whispered to me, "Stay inside, keep recording, do not get pulled into a conversation." And I nodded, because I could see my parents trying to angle their bodies to catch a glimpse of me through the crack in the door. Like if they could see my face, they could manipulate me back into being their obedient prop. The deputy came back and said, "All right. Here's what's going to happen. You're leaving this property now. If you return tonight, you will be cited for trespass. If you continue contacting agencies with false claims, that becomes a separate problem." My father started, "This is my father-in-law's house," and she cut him off. "This is a probate matter. Ownership is in dispute until the court says otherwise. You do not get to decide with your feelings." I almost wanted to applaud, but I stayed still because the biggest win wasn't the deputy scolding them. The biggest win was that their behavior was now documented by someone outside the family, someone who didn't owe them loyalty. My mother stepped down the porch, and as she passed the door, she hissed just loud enough for me to catch it, "You're going to be alone after this." And it landed like a threat and a confession, because they always think loneliness is the punishment that keeps you in line. My father followed, but before he got in the car, he looked up at the house and said, "You think you won? That little folder won't save you." And then he got into the passenger seat like a man who still believes he's in charge, even while he's being escorted off a porch. When their car pulled away, the deputy took Elliot's information and Lou's, nodded at the door and said, "Ma'am, if you're inside and you heard threats, you can add a statement," and Elliot answered for me. "We will, and we'll provide recordings," and the deputy said, "Good," like she meant it. The second the cruiser left, I finally exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding since the airport, and I leaned against the wall in Harold's hallway and felt my hands shake for the first time all night. Not because I was weak, because my body had been borrowing calm like a loan, and it was finally coming due. Elliot didn't baby me. He didn't do that pity voice. He said, "Now we prepare for morning." And he set the USB drive on the table like it was a loaded weapon. "We can't watch it here," I said, and Elliot nodded. "Not yet. Chain of custody matters. We'll make a forensic copy with proper documentation. But the letter and the notarized statement? Those are already nuclear." Then he opened Harold's letter again and read one line out loud, slow. "Do not let them erase you." And I swear something in my chest unclenched, because my whole life, I've been treated like a problem to manage, and now my grandfather had left me proof that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't unstable. I was targeted. We left the house the way we entered, careful, documented, and as we walked to the car, I looked back at Harold's porch and thought about how my parents had tried to turn me into a threat at TSA, tried to cancel my flight, tried to move the hearing, tried to make the judge proceed without me, and when none of it worked, they showed up at night to claw at a dead man's wall safe. If anyone ever tells you family wouldn't do that, I want you to remember this. Family will do whatever their character allows, and titles like mother and father don't disinfect behavior. That night, in the hotel, I slept with Harold's letter on the nightstand and the deputy's incident card tucked under it, and I woke up before my alarm because my brain kept replaying my mother's last hiss, "You'll be alone," and I realized she was wrong about one thing. I wasn't alone anymore. I had a record, a paper trail, and a judge who had already shown he doesn't like being used. The next morning, I walked into court with Elliot beside me, originals in his bag, and my parents sitting at the other table pretending they hadn't been on that porch hours earlier, my father in his press suit, my mother with her watery eyes ready to perform, and the judge looked over his glasses and said one sentence that made my spine go straight. "Before we begin, I've reviewed the supplemental exhibits and last night's law enforcement note." My father's face tightened, my mother's mouth trembled, and the judge continued, "This court will not tolerate interference, intimidation, or manufactured narratives." And in that moment, I understood something that I hope you take with you too. You don't beat people like this by out-yelling them. You beat them by making their own actions undeniable. And right as the judge reached for the file, Elliot leaned toward me and whispered, "When we introduce the safe contents and the USB, they're going to panic." And I whispered back, "Let them," because for once, it wasn't my job to keep them comfortable. Now tell me honestly, because I want your judgment in the comments. Did my parents cross the line the moment they called airport police on me? Or did they cross it when they showed up at Harold's house trying to break in after dark? And if you were in my shoes, would you ever forgive this? Or would you draw a line so hard it leaves a scar? And if you want the next story to hit even harder, the one where a family tries a new trick when they realize the court won't buy the old one, watch the next video I'm linking right now because it shows the exact moment control people switch from concern to something uglier when they realize you can't be erased anymore.